Hey everyone, welcome back. Just a few hours after the live podcast on Monday night, we have a special bonus, special edition. Did I mention special? We were going to kick off our training camp positional previews on Wednesday with the defensive backs. In light of the news of Tuesday, the trade for Darren Waller, we're going to talk about the Darren Waller trade and then kick off the camp preview by position with the receivers, wide receivers, tight ends. Joining me to do this is Dante Collinelli, deputy editor of Miami Dolphins on SI. Dante, big welcome. What's up? And then what else did I want to say about this? So when you see the episode Wednesday, which will be posted and become viewable at noon, it may say we kick off the series. Erase that part. So we're kicking off right now with the wide receivers and the tight ends. And the newest member, let's talk about that first. The acquisition of Darren Waller, which was like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it's hard to think of like when Minkah Fitzpatrick trade happened on Monday. I was like shocked. I was like, I wouldn't have gotten this in 1,000 guesses that Minkah was going to come back to Miami. And I got the notification this morning that the Dolphins had traded for Darren Waller, a player who'd been retired for an entire year. And I was like, man, I don't know if I would have gotten this in 2,000 guesses. It's back-to-back days of just like completely shocking returns in trades for the Dolphins. And we can kind of get into whether it makes sense for the Dolphins to acquire Darren Waller or not. But I mean, it just goes to show you can do all of this research. You can write a really, really good article about 3 tight end targets for the Miami Dolphins on Monday. And then on Tuesday, you're completely off base. And that's, a part of the fun of covering the NFL. But a really shocking trade. I don't know if you felt the same way, but like, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I was like, Darren Waller, wow.
Well, yeah, right off the bat, you're talking about a guy who retired in 2024 after one season with the New York Giants. Who's got some well-chronicled substance abuse issues in his past, then had a very public breakup with WNBA player Kelsey Plum, wrote a rap song about it, then became a rapper. I don't know how successful.
If you have not listened to the rap song, I highly recommend it. It's an event. You will have an experience if you listen to the rap song that Darren Waller made about his divorce with Kelsey Plum. Just there's your disclaimer.
Yeah, no. I remember hearing that song because I watched the video and being like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much success he had with follow-up singles, not necessarily my musical genre, so I don't know. The thing with Darren Waller, he's going to be 33 years old in September. Once upon a time, he was a stud. In 2019, 2020 with the Raiders, it's 107 catches one year, 90 catches the next year. Then he got injuries. Then obviously he had the off the field situation with his wife. I believe they were married. Yes, they were married. That obviously didn't help. Then injuries all over the place. And then his 1 year with the Giants was rather forgettable. His numbers weren't horrible. Actually, he had 52 catches, and this is where maybe I point out that 52 catches is higher than any number of catches Jonnu Smith had before he joined the Dolphins last year. Not to do a comparison, but ostensibly, he is coming onto the roster to ideally fill the role that Jonnu Smith handled last year, which is your receiving tight end. Darren Waller is much more receiver than tight end. He's an oversized tight end. Kind of let's say, to me, a better, more athletic Mike Gesicki at his peak. But he is 33. And so let's get through the terms of the deal, as many reports. It's Darren Waller and a conditional 2027 seventh-round pick going to the Dolphins in exchange for a 2026 sixth-round pick, and then Waller getting a one-year deal with the Dolphins worth up to $5 million, obviously reaching some incentives. It's not a major investment. If it blows up in terms of Waller comes here and decides, and that doesn't work out. Like somebody on social media pointed out to me, which was, a great poll. Back in 1996, the Dolphins signed a very highly talented tight end who had been a first-round pick as a free agent came to Miami. I know you're looking at me like, I don't know who the hell is he talking
Nope,
about.
I wasn't even alive.
This is for the old folks. And major props to the gentleman who pointed that out. His name was Johnny Mitchell, who was a first-round pick out of Nebraska, and basically 2 weeks into camp, he retired. And then he unretired and signed with Dallas and played a little bit longer. But I don't know if it's quite the same thing because Johnny Mitchell had not retired. He retired after he joined the Dolphins. But even my point is, worst case scenario, I think it's a pretty good gamble because if he comes in and he's anywhere near peak 2019, 2020, that's becomes your best receiving tight end on the roster, and there's no close second.
Yeah, so we're doing this podcast like a few hours after the fact. I wrote the original story on Dolphins on SI. I've had some time to think about this, and I'll be honest, I'm still not really 100% positive where I come down. I agreed, right? The investment is so low. Does it actually matter if Darren Waller is good this year? No, not really. They basically got him for free. Up to $5 million probably means it's 2.5 to 3 base salary with 2 to 1.5 million in incentives. They didn't give up any valuable picks. It's a pick swap technically. At worst, you're losing a sixth. So the investment, it is what it is. It's fine. If Darren Waller's not a great player, it's fine. I just don't understand the strategy of adding a player like Darren Waller in conjunction with the other moves and how they've spoken about the team this offseason. I think that's where this move loses me. Waller is going to be brought in and people are going to comp him to Jonnu Smith. And from a very big picture perspective, yes, both of them are better pass catchers than run blockers. But Jonnu, at the worst, Jonnu is more of a tight end who's a hybrid fullback. You can kind of move him around. He is a mover. He's an H-back type player. You'll see that a lot more in the Arthur Smith offense than you did with Miami. Darren Waller is a wide receiver. He's not even a tight end. He's a wide receiver. There is no part of Darren Waller's game that is tight end. And so I do think that he's different than Jonnu Smith. You have to use him differently. That is not a one-to-one transition to me on the football field. Waller is more of a vertical threat. He's not as good after the catch with the ball in his hands that Jonnu Smith is. Now, he has other advantages. I would tell you he's a better route runner. He's a bigger player. He's better in contested situations. He has a bigger catch radius. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a downgrade as so much as it is different. To me, this is not a one-to-one fix. The other problem that I have with this, kind of wrapping my head around it, is the Dolphins have made a commitment this offseason to telling people that they want to be a tougher ground and pound, run-first offense. They want blue-collar players. Yes, they want to run the ball. They want more balance. That's what they've talked about all offseason. Yes.
They've said that every offseason, and then the season starts and they wind up chucking it all over the field.
But how many moves have they made this year that would tell you they're more serious about it this year than in previous years? A lot. Big investments in guard. They have brought in a ton of big receivers. To me, those are the investments. No, it's not one. Every UDFA signing that they brought in are big receivers.
I don't count UDFAs until they're actually on the roster. Sorry.
That is a change in prototype. In previous years, all the UDFAs were 5'10" and ran a 4.3. It's a change in prototype. And look, my point is, this is a team that I felt like got it, right? You mentioned it, and I don't disagree with you. They've said that in the past, and then they didn't get it. They went into the season, and they went back on it. Maybe this is wishful thinking. Maybe I was too optimistic. That's fair. I felt like this was a team that finally got it. Darren Waller doesn't do anything for you in that category. You can go back and listen to an interview that he gave talking about why he retired in 2023. And he points to a sequence when the Giants went up to Buffalo in a primetime game, and he had to run block for 3 straight plays. And he said he sat on the ground and said to himself, what am I, a fullback? And he said that was one of the moments he realized he didn't want to play football anymore. I have a really hard time listening to what the Dolphins have said all offseason, the moves that they have made, the things that they have talked about doing, and thinking to myself that Darren Waller makes any bit of sense from a big picture perspective for this football team other than he can catch the ball. And It's just not doing it for me. It's difficult for me to wrap my head around that. And that's before we get to the fact he didn't play football last year.
Yep.
He's been a wildly injured player. And look, I mean, he gave another interview where he said he had a really scary hospitalization during his final season, and that also pushed him to retire. Like, that's a lot, man. Those are a lot of red flags for me. It's just like, again, the investment is low. It is. If it doesn't work out, it's not a big deal, but it's a very confusing move. I think the only thing that makes sense to me is that he has a really, really big time connection with Frank Smith. And those two really connected with the Las Vegas Raiders back in the 2019-2020 season when Waller was at an all-pro level. And I forget where I saw it, but I did see a clip of him talking to John Gruden where he said, hey, if I am going to come out of retirement, it would be to play for either you, Gruden, or Frank Smith. And so I think that for me, if I'm looking at why did the Dolphins make that move, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. I don't think this is a player that actually replaces Jonnu Smith. I think he's a different type of receiver that you need to give the ball to in different ways. And from a big picture, I don't want to use the word culture, but from a team mindset, it's a confusing move. But I think Frank Smith knows him. They're betting on getting the most of him. I am not optimistic about that happening. It's just, there's a lot of red flags.
Okay. Again, to me, I don't mind it as you seem to mind. Again, to me, it's low risk, high reward. And he gives you another option in the passing game. Also can be a good red zone threat with his height. And you mentioned his connection to Frank Smith. He's also got another interesting connection right here. And I am just going to mention the connection and you guys do with it what you want. But his agent is Drew Rosenhaus. And Drew Rosenhaus also represents Jonnu Smith. And the trade for Darren Waller happened one day after Jonnu Smith was traded to the Steelers. All I'm going to say. You guys can do the math on here. Okay, so this is, as I mentioned earlier, Austin, it is combination Waller, and I think we said our piece on Waller. Now, if we look at as a quick training camp preview, now he joins a receiving core that to me is still all about Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, and which is why I would push back against your narrative about the Dolphins wanting to be more of a running team. As long as Tua is the quarterback, Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, your two wide receivers, that's where you got to make your money. And if the Dolphins are going to be explosive offensively, it's Tyreek Hill being back to 2023 form, and then him when he talks about I want to get 2,000 yards. Absolutely, yes. Because when he was flirting with 2,000 yards in 2023, that's when the Dolphin offense was at its best. And it also wasn't taken away from the running game because the running game had its best season that exact same year. So it's Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, Nick Westbrook-Akine. It was another big body to add it to the wide receiver position to help the blocking for the running game, which is not to be dismissed entirely, just a little bit. And then I like Malik Washington a lot. I think he's in for a good second year. It's the offseason program. It didn't mean much, but if you can impress in the offseason program, the dude looked really, really good. Outside of that, I know, Dante, you're very big on all the UDFAs. For me, it's your basic. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to use the same name again I always use, Zaquandre White, who people kept in my ear of like, that Dolphins got a steal right there. And I saw two practices, and I'm like, what am I seeing? What am I missing? And lo and behold, it was one of the first players cut in training camp. Do Anthony Armstrong? No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Andrew Armstrong.
Andrew Armstrong. Theo Weiss Jr. There was another one that they signed as a UDFA. They all had their moments in the offseason program. Did any of them show me something that would make me believe they're going to make the 53? No. In fact, right, the one who stood out to me the most among the non-locks on the roster was D. Eskridge, former draft pick. I think it was a second-round pick of the Seahawks maybe at one point.
Yes.
And he played sporadically last year. Dude looked good. So I don't know that any of the UDFAs are making the roster. But the bottom line, if Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle or Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, that is an explosive wide receiver core.
Yeah, so as an aside to the UDFA thing, the reason I brought them up is because it's a change in acquisition prototype. It's not because I think those guys are going to be super impactful players in year one. I just want to make that clear. I am not sitting here stumping for Theo Weiss and Andrew Armstrong as major contributors to the Miami Dolphins. It is a change in prototype at receiver, and I think that shows you that they're serious about fine-tuning the running game. But to get back to your major point, yeah, I agree. The receiver room, it's Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, and then it's everybody else doing nice niche things around them, right? If those players are operating at 100% and performing up to their ability, the Dolphins passing game is going to be explosive, it's going to be consistent, and it's going to be good. What I find to be the big question about this receiver room is, I'll be honest, I feel like Hill and Waddle will be fine this year. I'm not particularly worried about them not being better than they were last year. I think it'll frankly be hard for them to be worse generally if the quarterback position's better. So my question is, can this receiver room evolve? Can they do something different? Because you brought up 2023 and why that team was incredibly explosive, right? They had the running game. They had the big plays in the passing game. Cool. They still fell flat on their face down the stretch because all they had was speed. They had nothing else going for them. You can be as explosive as you want. If you want to get over the hump and you're the Miami Dolphins offense, you got to go out there and show teams something that isn't Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle's speed. You have to. Great. Whether it's Darren Waller and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine giving you size downfield on vertical passing concepts, whether it's Malik Washington on design touches behind the line of scrimmage, reverses, jet passes, whatever that looks like, whoever it ends up being, the name is irrelevant, but the Dolphins have to find something that isn't completely reliant on Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle winning with speed and winning on these timing routes in the middle of the field. They have to expand what they're capable of doing. And so when I look at a player like Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, and if you follow my work and you read the site, Dolphins on SI, I've written about 3 stories this offseason about why I think Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is an incredibly important free agency signing, because he gives you something different. There is something new to his skill set that the Dolphins frankly haven't had under Mike McDaniel. They tried to get it. I think that was sort of the idea when they brought in somebody like Odell Beckham Jr. I think that was sort of the idea when they drafted Eric Izukama a few years ago. He's a bigger player. Just in execution, it hasn't worked out because, Odell, frankly, just not the same player he was earlier in his career. And Eric Izukama has been buried on the depth chart and, whatever. So like Nick Westbrook-Ikhine to me gives you something different. There's something new there. And that's the big question for the Dolphins receiver room to me. Yes, Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill have to bounce back this year. There's absolutely no question about that. They need to be better. They're both still good. I'm not worried about their natural ability. But if the Dolphins are just Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle in 2025, the results are going to be the same that they were in 2024 and 2023. I think to me, that's the question. Can Malik Washington, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, Darren Waller now, can those players give you something that you haven't had? I'm optimistic that they can. I'm with you. I like Malik Washington. I think he's a useful player. I really like Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I think D. Eskridge is a good pull on your part. I think he can give you something in a similar role to Malik Washington and also play on special teams. He can be a punt kick returner type player. So it's a good group, and I think they have a chance to evolve this year, but that's going to be the most important thing for me.
Yeah, one point that needs to be made, and if you follow the podcast, I'm not a big fan of using injuries as an excuse when you fail. The fact remains that Tyreek wasn't right the entire year. It wasn't just the wrist. And Waddle also was hurt quite a bit. Unfortunately, that's a pattern for Waddle. He plays through a lot of stuff, but he gets banged up an awful lot, which I guess is to be expected because he's kind of slight. So that's another consideration. But I do think there's talent there. I think it's a better group than it was last year. As we're going to do in every position that we discuss, we're going to compare it to where they were as opposed to where they are now. It's a better group, if for no other reason, and Westbrook-Ikhine does give him a dimension they didn't have before. And since we're doing wide receivers and tight ends, if you combine the tight ends or if you do the tight ends separately, probably would have to say the tight ends were better last year when you had Durham Smythe, who was a pretty solid all-around guy, and you had Jonnu Smith, who I think was more. And I just noticed the face you just made. Yeah, I guess
I'm not a Durham Smythe guy.
No, okay.
I'm not a Durham Smythe guy. Jonnu, yes. Jonnu,
okay.
yeah.
I will say this.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, Durham Smythe to me. Let me rephrase that, okay? Because was not good last year at all. The years before that, to me, he was a solid, not an impact guy, but a solid two-way tight end. Last year, you're right, he wasn't good. And you can think he wasn't good before that as well. and Jonnu was a more obviously known commodity than Darren Waller is. So I think you'd have to go tight ends. To me, we're in better shape at this time last year because Waller is such a wild card.
I agree. Yeah, I think Jonnu, like you said, bit more of a pedigree, bit more reliable presence. Obviously, I don't think anyone expected him to catch 90 balls and have 900 yards or whatever it ended up being. Like, I mean, I think Waller can give you a good punch if he's the player he was a few years ago. So we'll see. But an underrated ad in the tight end room that I do want to bring up, I think Pharaoh Brown's a really good blocker. I think that's a huge upgrade over Durham Smythe. But I would agree. I think the tight end room. Sure. I think I am a Durham Smythe hater. I think that's what I'm learning right now. But yeah, I think the tight end room probably a little bit better last year, and I think the receiver room's a little bit better this year.
Okay, fair enough. Now, as we will do it with every position, we're going to compare it to the AFC. So let's do them separately. At tight end, Buffalo to me has got a very good 1-2. Tandem. Although it did not perform great last year, partly because of injuries and also performance issues. That's Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. In fact, there was a lot of chatter in Buffalo this offseason that maybe they're going to move on from Dawson Knox. They haven't. If they're right, that's a really good tandem. New England has Hunter Henry, who, fun fact, signed with the Patriots in 2021 at the same time as Jonnu Smith, which was the offseason of spending for the Patriots. Was it 2021? May have been the year before, actually. There was one offseason where they went on a shopping spree, and it didn't work out for them. And Hunter Henry was the more solid. Jonnu really flamed out in New England, revived his career with the Dolphins. Hunter Henry, solid, maybe a BB minus tight end. And for the Jets, I know they had Tyler Conklin. I'm going to have to put on my glasses and look at my notes here.
Mason Taylor. They drafted. How could you forget?
Shame. Oh, that's bad. Mason Taylor, the rookie second-round pick from LSU, who has some type of connection to the Dolphins. That also escapes me. Hold on. Oh, yeah. Obviously, he's the son of Jason Taylor. That's a big hope that he's going to take over and give him some good tight end play. As I mentioned, they had Tyler Conklin and I believe CJ Ozuma as their tight ends last year.
Yep. This year they have Jeremy Ruckert and Stone Smart behind Mason Taylor.
Stone Smart's another one who's like kind of a wide receiver masquerading as a tight end. But Mason Taylor is the big hope there. I think Buffalo probably has the best tight end group of the bunch. Again, the Dolphins are such a wild card with Waller there.
Yeah, I would rank it Buffalo, New England, New York, Miami. I think the Dolphins have the worst tight end room in the division. I am not optimistic about Darren Waller. It doesn't matter because they didn't give up anything for him. So like if he flames out, it's not a big deal. I'm just not very optimistic about him making a big impact this year. And I liked Mason Taylor a lot coming out of LSU. I think Hunter Henry's a good player, and Dalton Kincaid is a very imperfect player, but he's productive. And I would say the same thing about Dawson Knox. I think when you put them together, you have like one good tight end. So I think it's Buffalo, New England, New York, Miami at tight end.
You know who we didn't talk about, and that's shame on us for being the unprofessionals that we are, bowing our head in shame. Julian Hill, we haven't talked about Julian Hill. I know he became infamous for a lot of penalties early in the season. Those got cleaned up. Some of those were on special teams also. So again, they may have appeared like, oh my Lord, it's a penalty every time. He's one of those who flashes every once in a while. I think I saw some folks like look for him to really emerge in 2025. It's one of those for me is I'm gonna believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think he probably got a little bit too much flack than he deserved last year. The thing with Hill is he's a high variance player, right? And I think that's why he gets fans' attention so much, because when he misses a block, it's like a real whiff, like a casual fan watching the game can see when he screws up, because it's like he screwed up and it's a 5-yard loss. It's not like, he screwed up and the running back eked out a couple yards. It's like, no, Julian Hill whiffed completely and it's a 5-yard loss, or it's a 15-yard holding penalty on a 20-yard pass, or like whatever it ended up being, right? Like when he screws up, it's like, it's like very obvious. But I thought he got better down the stretch as well. I think his blocking has a lot of potential. He's strong. Like he is a physically strong player. You just got to get him to like frame blocks better, hit dudes at the right time with the right technique, and I think he'll be okay. But yeah, I don't have a ton of hope for Julian Hill other than him being a depth tight end who plays on special teams, which is fine. He was an undrafted free agent. Like that's a nice little career if you can stick around for 4 to 5 years as a depth player who plays special teams. And he's played a decent amount of snaps. He played like almost 400 snaps last year, if I'm not mistaken. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you need those players on your team, but I would personally like to see less of Julian Hill this coming year, unless he took a really nice jump this offseason.
Yeah, because he ate your friend Durham Smythe's blocking snaps, and Jonnu Smith was eating Durham Smythe's receiving snaps, so Durham Smythe became a forgotten player. So
there you go.
Durham Smythe now with the Chicago Bears, by the way. And as far as wide receivers are concerned, to me, until proven otherwise, the Dolphins clearly have the best set of wide receivers in the AFC East. You look at Buffalo, it's a whole bunch of guys, but Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman. Why do I keep forgetting things? New England. Matt Collins is now with New England.
He's with New England.
Of the AFC East.
He's running the gambit.
Yeah, New England has Stephon Diggs as well. They have Kendrick Bourne. And then the Jets have Garrett Wilson, who's a very, very good wide receiver.
Yes.
But they no longer have Devontae Adams on the other side. And they have Alan Lazard, who hasn't been traded to the Steelers just yet, maybe because Aaron Rodgers hasn't made the demand yet, but maybe that's going to happen. And
so Buffalo, Josh Palmer and Curtis Samuel would probably be the other names.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So they have what I would say a lot of competent wide receivers. I don't know that they have a complete stud unless Keon Coleman takes a jump as a former first-round pick. The best wide receiver in the division outside of the Dolphins to me clearly is Garrett Wilson. And then Stephon Diggs, and the Patriots have to see what he has left after the torn ACL from last year. If he's right, he's a guy who runs great routes and tends to make an immediate impact on a new team until
he doesn't.
Until he doesn't, and it gets old and he has to move on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think this is the Dolphins' biggest advantage at any position across the entire division. Like, I like Buffalo's receiver room generally. I think it's fine. I feel the same way about the Jets and the Patriots receiver rooms. I think they're fine. I think Garrett Wilson's a star. Like, he's very good. But I mean, I think the Dolphins have like a chasm here between them and the next two teams, just based on, I think Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle are all pro level players when they're right. And I know Waddle hasn't made an all pro team yet, but I think he has the talent to do so. And the only other player in the division at this point in their career, I don't think Stephon Diggs has that juice still. It would be Garrett Wilson. So I think the Dolphins have a huge gap here. You'll listen to the other positional previews, and there are going to be some where the Dolphins do really well. There are going to be others where they don't do so well. But this one, like, I think this is, if they're going to press the advantage on their division rivals, this is the space to do it.
I agree. And this is why I've said many, many times that to me, if for the Dolphin offense to be special, those two guys right there, no pressure, but they have to ball out. So we shall see if that happens. That's going to wrap it up. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Tomorrow, as indicated earlier, we'll be kicking off. See what I did? The training camp preview by position with the cornerbacks. Technically, it's not going to be a kickoff, but do us a favor, pretend it is. Please like, subscribe, share all that good stuff. And when you're not watching the podcast, I would highly encourage you and ask you very politely, check out MiamiDolphinsOnSide.com for Dante's fine work and my passable work as well. So until next time, thanks for watching and have a good one.